Our last videos have done a couple of general things. The first one was to recap, just to put everything back into a package to show that there's a plan, and that while we've talked many times about the weakness and the catastrophe of not having a great Speaker of the House of Representatives, which is something needed for historical purposes, things to be done, and that I guess he was passed again and he's still in there, so another member of the establishment in Washington has been preserved. I don't think that was the goal of the last election, or that's certainly not the goal of any reform movement we have. So here we are. We recapped the plan that has to exist, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But the reason we're cutting everything off from Ukraine is not just to get into a war that we have no business being in, or to get out of a war that we have no business being in, but also to save money that we don't have. Wars are very expensive. That's why things have to be done immediately, and why we talked about clawing back all of the resources from financial to people to technology to actual military hardware, all that stuff. The reason we're doing that is not just to put our military into a stronger position, either defensively or for future offensive needs, whatever we need that stuff for. But we also need the methodology, and we also need to repent, I guess, very fully of the Afghan pullout, which was a catastrophe, and that catastrophe hasn't been undone yet. So that's one of the reasons also, not just financial and military readiness, but to repent and undo and fix the disaster that the Afghan pullout not only was at the time, but the disaster that it inflicted upon our country, our military, our methodology, all of that stuff. So just to undo that and redo that, and again, I'm going to use the word repent. So, too bad for that. But in talking about undoing and pushing back on the vast invasion that we've suffered, just like great countries did in the past, great empires did in the past, the Huns and the Vikings and the Goths and Visigoths and everybody you can think of that have just came pouring into the Roman and Byzantine empires. Of course, the Byzantine Empire was still the Roman Empire, and other places of great culture and civilization that were destroyed by people flooding in. So the last video, we talked a little bit about what the purpose is in terms of the people who are frozen out and inflated out of the housing market, especially young people, but really everybody. Me too. And I'm obviously no young person. So we have to start in two general areas, very highly inflated markets: Washington, D.C., the Washington, D.C. area, and the collar counties, which are very rich and inflated and filled with people who are employed for no good reason and overpaid for no good reason, and often in position because they have discriminated against somebody. I'm talking about affirmative action, and I'm very sorry there. But that's why a lot of those people are there. So all that has to be tamped down and pushed out so that there are far less people involved in the housing market there. There is far less money being poured into them to pour into the housing market there. So all that stuff has to come down, and that has to be our goal very specifically. And not from no offense, I did vote for him, but not from a guy who's a great real estate mogul from Manhattan that probably just wants more and more people with more and more money at their disposal to go into the market and fill the buildings, fill the apartments, and pay inflated rents or just buying prices. So we have to think that we're going to bring all of that way down, and not just in Washington, but the other, I use the term discrete, meaning it's kind of a closed-in environment that can be somewhat separated from the rest of the world, or at least attacked as a distinct target. and that would be the inflation and overpopulation and the things that make Washington, D.C. and its environs so expensive unnecessarily, and to bring it down. And didn't quite get to what our objective ought to be. We talked about maybe just before the prices before COVID or whatever, but it really needs to go back in scale by years, meaning the price of living there and the numbers of people that are jammed into that expensive and overpriced and bloated environment. And then the other one, of course, was the San Francisco area. San Francisco is just a disaster in so many different ways, and only part of it, but part of it, is the fact that people have just been sucked in with endless amounts of money to inflate out the normal American people that should be just moving there, doing work, having children, getting married, and keeping the place clean and obeying the culture and the laws that made it a decent place like any other nice city in America for many, many years. So we've got to get back to that, and that means a lot of people have to be pulled out and sent away. And a lot of the money has to come out of there that's been pouring in to no good result, and that's for sure. So we need to see the price, the numbers of people that are jammed into the Bay Area, San Francisco, San Jose, Oakland. I don't know what exactly has happened to Oakland. It always had its problems, but golly, I think just lately those problems have turned into something that would make the well, it's just a real disaster. So we have to send the H-1B visa people and all the people, extended families that have followed them in, and the birthright citizenship people that probably followed them in too, and just really rectify all those things according to what is the law and what is our history and our culture. And that's a city that belongs to the people and the country and the geography of the United States, which brings in one other negative that I would talk about. It was very tempting when people like the governor of Florida and the governor of Texas, I could really understand why they wanted to sweep people up and send them to places where where very wealthy liberals lived, like New York City and like Martha's Vineyard, things like that. That was satisfying in a way. But I always thought, what a terrible mistake that is. That's taking people who somehow got in over the border or over the water or for some reason or just through trickery and lying and illegality, they've gotten into our country someplace like southern Florida. And then to take them and distribute them to the desirable and the most desirable and attractive places in our country. Gee, that's what I think we thought Obama was doing, that, sending all these people to small towns where there was housing for them, immigrants, illegal aliens, and so on and so forth. So we started doing that, or the Republicans started doing that just to show them who's boss and make the Democrats feel bad. But what we were doing was distributing them throughout our country. Those places were our cities, our towns, our islands, our places. They didn't belong to these people, and it was not our job to distribute people who were here illegally or just undesirably and to put them in places around the country because we wanted to show somebody just how, well, whatever. That was a big, big mistake. They should have been sent over the nearest border. I think that's about it for now. So thanks for listening. Please do subscribe and like. Apparently that's a big deal. I'm not a creature of this medium, so I don't remember to do things like that, and I do apologize. So please do subscribe and like the video if you would, please.